Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Environmental Podcast. My name is
Yeah,
Courtney.
I'm up.
Yes,
This is
we
our
are Dandelion Branding.
yeah, and this is our podcast where we choose different aspects of sustainability and we investigate them for several weeks, and then we tell you about them through the lens of social and environmental justice.
hmm hmm Yes, this is the first week where we're actually diving into research about this specific topic, and we've been talking about
Yeah,
freshwater access, or lack thereof. And I think, yeah, I mean, the next two topics are pretty much going to be focused on freshwater in America.
yeah, yeah,
hmm
exactly. These are things that we've experienced in our lifetime, so we wanted to learn more about, and specifically in social justice ways.
hmm
um, so we're going to split up, and this week I'm going to talk about the Flint water crisis, and next week Court will talk about
The Dakota Access Pipeline in Line 3 and
yeah
why that affects freshwater. hmm
yeah super. I'm really excited to like get an update on that one.
Yeah,
um,
it's wild. Yeah. And likewise, I mean, yeah, the issue with in Flint is incredibly tragic and just wild that it's still going on, regardless of like the intense international news
yep,
around the issue.
yep.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I will start about Flint. Flint is actually where I grew up. So it hits real close to home, like 5 miles from home. For me, everything I did growing up wasn't like going to school or going home. It was always in Flint, like, anything. So this one, I had already left when it started, but yeah, my family's there. I have friends there. It's my original community. So this one was not, I don't want to say difficult to research, but it was more emotional than I typically get about, because I was there for part, I'm like was there.
hmm
Um
Yeah, it's more
yeah.
human, it's more real. It's more, yeah, when you have like an actual context for the places that you're hearing about or yeah, it's
Mhm. Yeah, and it's things like, yeah, I'll get into it. So some stuff about Flint, if you don't know, the population in 2019. I pulled all of the statistics that I'm gonna give now from the Census Bureau, both the U.S. statistics when I compare it, and also the Flint statistics. So right now, or in 2019, the population was 95,538 people. That's not very many. It's just under
mm-mm.
100,000. I think it may have gone up a little bit since then, but not much. And it's been declining for a while. 54.1% of folks in Flint are Black and 39% are white. So it's a predominantly Black community. Um, and the systemic racism and just like I think are especially, and the issues around race and racism are really potent in Flint. This is just sort of comes from knowing, like, I grew up in a white community that was just outside white flight, and the conversation around white flight, when you start to see those conversations, like when you learn about it, Flint is very often mentioned because essentially GM came in 1947 to the Flint area. They employed white folks, and they also employed Black folks. So a lot of people moved from the South to Michigan, which is a northern state. And then you start seeing, I think from the 40s or maybe even as early as the 30s, you start seeing redlining, you start seeing white flight in a really big way, in a really open way. This wasn't, it's overt, and it was intentional and overt in this area. So, and it still remains one of the most segregated places in the country.
Wow.
Yeah. So the median household income, it's also very poor in Flint, is $28,834. The average in the US is around $62,800.
Significant difference. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. And the per capita income is around 17,000, while the average is around 34,000. In Flint, almost 40% of people live in poverty, and the average is just over 10%. So this is a poor Black community. They're uneducated. They're in this area. Only 12% of people over 25 have a bachelor's degree, and the national average is 32%. This is the part that I think I feel really personal about, because when I graduated college, which was 2012, it was December of 2012, realized this problem, the Flint Water Crisis, started in April of 2013, I lived in Michigan at that time. In 2012, Rick Schneider was the speaker at my graduation. And his whole speech, which I booed because I think he was a prick, and I protested that because he didn't go to MSU and he's a shitbag, and he's always been a shitbag. And so yeah, he was problematic even in 2012. He asked that we stayed. He was like, "You've graduated college now. Please stay in your Michigan community." That was his whole speech. Like, please don't leave, because there is a brain drain going on in Michigan, and in particular places like Lansing and Flint and Detroit. These cities that used to be like really big, really popular cities for people to like come to. People are leaving. There's a brain drain. Nobody wants to stay there. So for them to see like only 12% of people in Flint have over 25 have a bachelor's degree, that was like, oh, that's what he meant. Yeah. But there's no opportunity in Michigan, and there wasn't then, and then this happened. So in 2013, Flint decided to switch water supply. It was to save money, and it was something like $200 million over a period of 25 years, which in like government world is fucking nothing. Like, yeah, Flint's poor, and they, the population is declining. So, they were under emergency management, which was put in by Snyder. So like, okay, save some money. Sure. The plan, though, was to use the same water supply they had been using and just build a new pipeline. And I think that it was because they were getting their pipeline from Detroit's water system, and they just wanted to build their own water system so that they wouldn't have to like pay the Detroit water system overhead or whatever. Either that, or they're like defaulting, and Detroit was like, no.
Right.
Because the day after they decided to make this switch, Detroit announced that they were cut off.
That Flint was cut off.
Yeah, they gave them a cutoff deadline of like 6 months or a year or something. So Flint was like, okay, I guess we have to now definitely like do this. And I mean, who knows, contract world, what happened there. But that was April of 2014. So April of 2014 was when Flint water changed.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't make the cutoff for the new infrastructure. Surprise. Like, infrastructure takes so long to build. And rather than, come on. Like, they had a year to build a whole new fucking water pipeline.
That's really unrealistic.
It
Yeah.
was super
To go from
unrealistic.
not knowing anything about it to having to figure out a budget to having to figure out contracts to having to figure out and build it, logistics. That's wild. Yeah.
And the only thing I could find about that was, they decided in 2013 that they would switch, which means that conversation had been happening for a very long time before that, because that's just how politics works. But like, okay, they were like, we can do it in a year. No, they fucking couldn't. And instead of like pushing the project or being like, hey, can we extend the deadline? Can we pay, can we pay for water? They just switched to the Flint River. And like, when I heard that, I heard it happening when it happened. And my response was like, is that safe? Like, everybody's response was that way. Like, the like joke is like, I don't know. The only way I can think about it is like, my friend in high school got a 3-eyed fish tattooed on him because he was born on the Flint River. Like,
okay, so it historically has been polluted.
Yeah, it's just like, it's just kind of the local joke. Like, the Flint River isn't safe. It's like, you could find dead bodies and chemicals in there. The whole city was built around a metal factory, car factories. Like, that's not safe. It's not safe. But they were just like, it's safe. It was the water supply up until the 60s. This is 2014. Like, they didn't really test about it. They didn't really they literally just like, they were just like, oh, well, it used to supply water back in the 60s. So they just didn't do any testing to make sure that it would be like safe on the infrastructure that has also been there since then. This old ass thing.
Okay. That's interesting. So they just switched the source that was coming through the infrastructure that was already there.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. So rather than building anything new,
I think that we're working on building this new pipeline.
Yeah.
And because they just didn't want to pay the Detroit thing anymore, they didn't want to like go through that. They just switched like temporarily to the Flint River.
I see. Okay.
And they were like, we'll just do it for like a year or something, and then it'll be fine. That was the plan.
Short-sighted. Right. We'll see. Okay. Mm-hmm.
We're short-sighted. All right. This is so fucking stupid. Okay. Like, this whole time, like, this is so dumb.
What were their tests done though? So at that time when they
tested the Flint River and said like, if you sort of tested it, they were like, it's fine if it goes through like a water filtration system.
Okay.
The water itself was fine if it was filtrated.
Okay. They did some sort of treatment. Okay.
If they treated it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But there was no corrosion control in place. And this was noted by people. This was like stated. This was known. So we're in April of 2014. They're like, we're not going to put corrosion control in place. We don't need a full systematic situation here. That's just what they came out and said. No clear reason why. They just like didn't do any fucking research. Okay, they just didn't look at it. They're just like,
water's water. If we tested the water, we can just put it through these same pipes. All good.
It's all right. By May, 1 month later, people were like, my water stinks. Like, your water shouldn't smell. So they tested it then and found E. coli. People were getting sick, like really sick. So just in the water from the Flint River. So did they test it? Did they filter it? Who knows? Actually, I couldn't find any information about that part.
Huh.
They found E. coli. So people were told, just boil your water before you drink it. This is it. Like the state came out and they were like, yeah, just boil your water, okay?
Just pay the gas company more so you can boil all your water.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Love
Oh.
that.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
This ain't even. This is just fuck. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then the city's like, okay, what can we do about the E. coli? Let's just dump chlorine into the water. Like, there's people in a city just drinking a goddamn swimming pool. They just dumped a whole bunch of chlorine because it would kill the E. coli. But then that wasn't safe. Okay. Then not only did they like switch their system without testing it, that was really old with no corrosion control, they added a fucking corrosive chemical to the water system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. And this was in like May or June. Then like General Motors is there. It's a metal factory. They make car parts. They have heavy metal waste that goes into the air. Okay. That couldn't have affected the water since the 1960s, by the way. Just they noticed the corrosion on, they use a shitload of water. Oh yeah. They use a shitload of water from the Flint River to run the factory. It's like right on the river, man.
Okay.
So because they have to, I think
They need like cool stuff.
Yeah, to cool stuff. It's pretty normal. They switched back to the Detroit water supply in October of 2014 because they had their own separate system. But they noticed that the Flint River water with the chlorine was corroding their parts.
Wow.
And they were basically like, yo, we need to switch back. So they like made their own.
Because they have buckets of money. Great. Perfect.
Well,
yeah.
It's a car company. They can,
Mhm.
they're on a separate system. They can just,
how lucky of them to had to have that access.
Great. Yeah. Also, not only is chlorine in and of itself toxic, it has crazy reactions with organic matter, including releasing carcinogens. And because of the way that the water had been flowing through the pipe since like, I don't know, the 50s or 60s, like since the 60s, because that's when I switched to the Detroit system, there was a different type of organic matter in there. So it just like released carcinogens also into the water. So that was ruled unsafe in December or December 2014, January 2015 ish. They can't put chlorine in the water anymore.
Okay.
That's when the government started buying bottled water for everybody that worked in the government buildings. So in 2015, January of 2015, the government started being like, we're just going to have bottled water from now on. Okay. Like, it's safe and all. And like, we're going to stop putting chlorine in the water and it's safe and everything, but we're just going to give all of our employees bottled water. NBD.
Interesting.
Yeah. In February of 2015, the tests start to come out. So like a month later, the tests hit the news. The first test hits the news. And this, I mean, that it got through the office, the government office. It hit that office. They were like, we're switching to bottled water. And then nothing, they didn't say anything. The test hit the news in 2015 of February. No, nothing happened in July. There was a dude, his name is Brad. His name is Brad or something. That that came out and was like, if you're worried about the lead in the water supply, don't be. That test was an outlier. It wasn't real. But they also found that like the state had done its own testing, but it removed some of the tests that they did for some asinine reasons that they made up, so that it would stay under like action needed level.
Yeah. Okay. So they tampered with the evidence, essentially.
Yeah.
And who's Brad? What are his credentials? Just a guy?
He's just Brad. He's basically like a spokesperson. Like,
okay.
There are a lot of like media PR people, spokespeople throughout this story that are just coming out over and over again saying like, it's safe. Don't worry about the test. Just keep drinking. Like, don't worry about it. Everything is fine. Meanwhile, there's fucking shit, like stinky, like super duper hard. Like, you know, hard water is like minerally. Like these people's water just like changed. It's brown. It's like you would get it out of like an old bathtub if that was sitting outside for a
right. And this is something that the citizens have been dealing with now for years.
A year. It really did start in 2014 when they switched.
Okay.
Whether there was lead in the water beforehand, they don't know, because nobody ever had the thought to fucking test it, even though like you are supposed to report on your water levels yearly. But now we know that like the state was just cool with like removing tests that were high in lead. So, and that was essentially their argument, because in 2015, in July or August of 2015, Virginia Tech came and did a bunch of tests on the water. They found that there was high lead in the water. This is summer of 2015. And the spokesperson for the government shamed them and said that because there might have been lead in the water beforehand and they didn't test it then, but now they're testing it, they're just getting people riled up. Like, that's not a direct quote, that is a paraphrase, but like that's essentially what he came to say. He was like, you know,
there's no gaslighty ass shit.
I know. And this happened over and over again. Every time somebody tested something, it's like so horrible, it's laughable. Every time a test came out, there was some random PR bitch that was like, you don't know if that happened beforehand.
It doesn't matter. Holy moly. Wow.
Yeah. It's like, okay, let's remove cause from this issue. It's like same with climate change. Let's remove cause from this issue and just realize we got a fucking problem, y'all.
Right. Almost as if, if you can somehow disprove the test results, you don't have to do anything. But
that is absolutely what they did, though.
Right.
And then the Flint Hospital, Hurley, that's where I was born. They did a test and they found that they do have tests from before, because they're Flint local. Basically, their response was like, are you really? It's not a problem because it was happening before? Fuck you. They were like, actually, like 2% of kids had high lead in their bloodstream before, which is still pretty high, but this was pre-2014, and by the middle of 2015, 4% had way too high levels of lead in there. It doubled in less than a year, but that's definitely not.
I mean, for such a small community too, that's huge. Like, that's crazy.
These are kids under 6.
Wow.
Like, that lead poisoning it's really bad for kids. It's like developmentally problematic, and it also has connections with high levels of violence, like your
cognition and decision making.
It's also like a carcinogen. It's just really bad for your functioning. You can't function if you have too much metal in your blood. You can't.
Toxic, literally.
It eats your brain. It is very, and it's almost impossible to get rid of. I don't actually know. I haven't found anything that says that we can like solve that problem, because our body can't break down lead, which is actually the main issue. So our body can't break it down. We can't process it out. So it just stays in us and it circulates and it collects and then moves and collects and it moves, like that. Like people are worried about getting magnetized and shit. This is like really bad. Like, yeah. So we're this is so bad. It's so bad. In September of 2015, which is more than a year later, Flint released a health advisory. You can read it online, actually, and I grabbed the link, and so we can put it in the description.
Mm-hmm.
And it, like, remember that most of these people are really uneducated. Like, not very uneducated, but like a lot of this is a uneducated population.
Well, high school, yeah.
High school, but it's still like it's not written for that sort of reason. There's really big paragraphs in it that have almost no culpability, that say almost nothing, except for there's like one really big paragraph that says, if you're worried about it, consider using a filter or use bottled water, or let your tap run for 5 minutes before using the water to cook with, and totally avoid using tap water for baby formula. Like, it's not okay. Then it lists other ways lead may have gotten into your body. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a one-pager that was like, listen, the water's contaminated, don't use it if you don't have to.
Right. It was almost like let's just talk about lead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was like, we don't think any lead is safe.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about lead paint. Like, let's somehow trying to just skirt the issue.
Exactly. It was really just shitty. Mm-hmm. Really shitty. But it was a health advisory. They said all the things they needed to say in it. So that happened in September of 2015. Then a month later, they switched back to Great Lakes water supply and said, and then they released a statement that basically was like, oh, we didn't know the rules. So yeah, we didn't put corrosion control in place. That guy's Dan. That guy's name is, so we have Brad and Dan, who have both just said really stupid shit this entire time, essentially being like, it's not our fault. And we didn't know, so we just did it anyway. Like, that's it. The guy was like, Dan basically was like, yeah, so my team has never worked with a population of more than 50,000 before, so we didn't know the rule that there had to be corrosion control in place. We just didn't know. Nobody just read the rule. Nobody remember back in 2014, people were like, hey, how come you don't have corrosion control in place? And there are other people throughout it saying, like, I was looking at a timeline from NPR and the Associated Press for these, and they have like people saying,
of course,
much earlier, this doesn't
that's nonsense. That is a nonsense argument of we didn't know.
Yeah, no, he literally, that is literally the whole, what he said. He's like, this whole problem is because my team only works with people that have like cities that have less than 50,000 people in them. So we just.
So you're wholly unqualified for this job. Great. Cool. Perfect.
Right. Yeah. Basically, he's like, I'm stupid. I'm unqualified. Thanks, Dan. Thanks. Yeah. Then a state of emergency is declared in December of 2015 by the mayor, and in January of 2016 by Governor Snyder, Obama, and the EPA. January 2016. This is almost 2 years after this problem started. It is a year and a half after people started, just kind of more than a year and a half after people started sort of noticing that their water was brown.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in March of 2016, they put a plan in place. So now we are at 2 years. The action plan. This is when they decided to put support in place for kids under 6 with elevated lead levels in their blood. And this is when they decided to replace water fixtures in public facilities and replace the service lines that were lead. And increasing resources for schools. At some point on this process, they also started giving out free water, but free water bottle, like they had water bottle stations all over Flint. And yeah, that
water bottle stations.
Yeah, so you could go to like the local library or like the post office or whatever, and they had stations set up that had free water bottles, and you could get like plastic water bottles.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. That was how they like solved the crisis in the interim, where they were like giving out water.
I'm sure there was some sort of like quota or something, like you couldn't get too many cases.
Yeah, I don't.
Given like 1 case per family per week or something like
that. Is
there any limit? Yeah.
I know that there was a limit, but I don't know what it was. I also know that this isn't something that my parents had to deal with, and that was really, really stressful. They, while all this was going on, their pump failed, and they have a really old well in their house, and the city was trying to get them to hook up to city water.
I bet. Yeah.
They sure were, and they refused, and they had to take the city to court to be able to put a well on their own land. And for several months they had no water at all, no running water in their house at all. So they had to use the water bottles. They had to shower at work. They had to, which was Flint, right? Like they worked in Flint, so they were on the system. So they had to shower with water bottles. Like this was fucking terrible. Every day it was like, how, like, I was checking with them every day, asking like, how are you doing? What's going on? This was rough. Yeah. So,
and that was only a couple months versus like, years. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really bad. Yeah. So they put an action plan in place. In 2017, the Michigan Civil Rights Commission released a statement that is 138 pages long. It's a PDF. I have that link too. It's very long. It's basically just about how systemic racism is the backbone of this crisis. And it details like Flint basically from the 1930s on up, and how Flint is just so underserved, and how it's really not uncommon. This is a really extreme case, but this shit happens all over the states and really all over the world. Then in 2018, Snyder says that tap water is safe again, so they just close all the free water bottle sites. It wasn't actually declared safe until 2019 by the scientists. But when it had 3, but essentially some of the tests, the like limited tests they were doing, had just below levels for 3 months in 2018. So Snyder was like, cool, shut it down. We're good to go. It's fine. So that happened. There was then. This is some shit I didn't know. And it is like, it's reported on, but it's a little buried. In April, there's also like all these court cases going on because people want to hold people accountable for this. A lot of people were fired. Dan and Brad were both fired. They resigned. They were tried to, the government was trying to use them as a scapegoat, essentially, because they were like the people saying things. But yeah, a lot of people were tried for things like involuntary manslaughter, and this went all the way through the public health department, and the councils in Genesee County. And then in 2019, I think only one person had been tried at that point. 23 boxes of records were found in the basement of a state building that were just never turned over to the people investigating this.
Wow.
Yeah, there's an MLive article called "Millions of Flint Water Documents Found in Basement."
Wow.
Yeah, these had wiped phones, hard drives, shit that was just like memos and documents. This shit was just hidden. It was just not turned over. And then when they were questioned about it, the people were like, "Oh, I thought that you like had that," and those were all duplicates.
Mm-hmm.
Millions of documents.
Feigning ignorance again. Okay.
Yeah, that's like this whole thing. That's like, oh, we didn't know. It's like some shit. So they scrapped their whole investigation in 2019 and started over because they were like, there was a list of 8 names and only one of them was in the documents that were turned over. So they had to, and that is like just some super shady bullshit. Like, still unclear. They never actually released the names. I'm sure if you like dug around, you could probably find them.
Yeah, 8 names of people involved. People
involved. Yeah, there was like sort of a random list of names of people involved and people whose phones had been wiped, hard drive information that like they never released it. It was just sort of like nobody wanted to hear about the Flint Water Crisis in April of 2019, right? It was just sort of like a blip on the news spectrum. But yeah, they decided to start over entirely. Then last year, in the middle of Corona, a $600 million deal was accepted by the citizens of Flint to help basically with reparations, because they sued, as they should. And then, with the investigation in January of 2021, Governor Snyder and some of the other officials in his cabinet at the time was charged in the scandal. And there's still no official ruling. They're still like fighting it in court and out of court. My guess is that they're going to settle it out of court and it's never going to make it into big headlines. But he is charged with failing to timely declare an emergency in Flint. It took the guy almost 2 years. He, without properly something like he's responsible for the people that work for him, and that government failed. So he violated the state constitution by failing to check the performance of the public officials under his control.
Totally. Just massive negligence. Yeah.
Oh my God. At least. And there was like high bacteria levels in the water in like 2018 or something that led to Legionnaire's disease. And he's being held culpable for that too, because he totally should have fucking known. Like, he should have been, him and his cabinet, he's responsible as governor of a state. You're responsible for all of the mayors and shit in your state. So
yeah, that's just, yeah, and it's not for lack of like access. Like, he could have asked. There are how many people who know this information about managing cities and their water supplies? Like,
there are people who just do that.
there are
And
people that dedicate their entire
right.
lives to that.
And instead of
Give them a call.
Yeah, and instead of listening to them, he, like, other people called them. They came in, they did tests. Instead of listening to them, he allowed the other people in his government to just say, "Whoops, we didn't know," or like, "That's an outlier," and just lie. Like,
yeah, it's just lying. Yeah.
it's just a lie. Sorry, I know you're busy as a government, but there's lead in the water in one of your main cities, and so we should, like, that seems like an emergency in 2014 when it was found. Seems like it, you know. So that's Flint till now.
So, okay, is the water like actively being tested now? Like, was it like
Unclear. Like, I think it just kind of, since 2018 or like 2019, it was declared like safe. So I think it had been safe.
okay?
It had been under the levels, or like within the safety use for a certain period of time.
Okay, and there's new governors now.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they've also been really busy dealing with Corona. Michigan was really crazy because it's like real militia time, and there's shit going on, like dumbasses that just decide things like, we're gonna kidnap the governor, and they had like this whole big plot.
Yeah, that did
wear
happen.
masks and kidnap the government. Like, that's the kind. So yeah, the governor.
Yeah, they stormed the Capitol building of that.
Also stormed the Capitol building.
Not the nation's capital, but yeah.
With guns. There are, look up photos of that. That shit was crazy.
Yeah, I almost forgot about that because it got overshadowed by the like January 6th. Yeah,
that was the first Capitol storm, and a lot of those people were at the January 6th.
Of course they were. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I know people that were there.
Likely.
God's friends were there.
I bet.
It's weird. Really weird. Anyway.
So, right. I mean, I remember hearing that people also had like ridiculously high water bills during this time. And like the people living there had to pay just like insane amounts for, like, the fact that they even had to pay for their tap water.
Yeah.
Their poison water in the first place is insane. But like, I just remember hearing about that when it was in the news again. This was probably at 2016.
And they're telling people to like run your water for several minutes before. Right. Like, I don't think that the water prices actually increased. I think that they were just trying to follow the rules. Like, let it run
the water and we're going to charge you. We're going to charge you for it.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So, fucking hell. It's so much. And the fact that it's just like still I mean, I'm glad that Snyder is charged.
Yeah.
That's a fucking miracle. That guy is a shit stick. So.
And the whole thing, like, it was just to save money? The whole thing.
The whole thing. Like pennies on the dollar. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. That's just the story. Like, I don't even know. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no real conclusion because it seems like
Happening.
there is no justice in that situation. Well, okay, there was a $600 million settlement, but like,
Yeah,
okay, for
last year, and the people being charged is still happening. There's like hella conspiracy around it. People don't trust. Like, even though it's technically safe, citizens of Flint are not drinking the water. They will
I've been
never
told it was
trust
safe
it.
the whole friggin' time.
When is it actually how can they ever trust this system ever again? And now
Mhm.
here you have this city who is deeply impoverished. If you drive through Flint, you will see like whole houses of burnt out like crack houses, and then like just whole streets. And
Mhm.
you will see um and then every so often you'll see like one house that is just like perfectly done, that is that where people are like living and take care of their yards, but
Mhm.
it's few and far between. You
Mhm.
can buy a house for super cheap there and pretty much do it like it is lawless. This city, it's been ignored and like removed from thought for the government, from the Michigan government for decades. It's not, it was not surprising to this population at all to
No.
find out that like there's lead in our water and we're not being helped. They didn't expect to be helped because because they've been ignored for so long.
Mhm.
Like it's just horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And like, yeah, they're never, I don't know. And that's in a space where it's like you can't leave. 40% of people live in poverty. How would they ever even move?
Mhm.
Like, yeah. How do you get out of that situation like that? Like people would be like, "Oh, if there's lead in your water, just leave." Like, can't.
Yeah, no, that's not a solution.
Yeah.
Not a
So
solution.
no. Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
Mm-hmm. So access to fresh water.
Even if you're less than 100 miles away from some of the biggest bodies of fresh water in the planet,
Yeah.
yeah, this is still an
It's still
issue.
a problem. Yeah. And like I just, that if the stats were flipped, if it was 54% white or had like higher medium income
Mhm.
or like, you know, in like an educated population, any of those things that, or, people were moving back into the city, like in any of those changes, this wouldn't have gone on for so long.
Mhm. If at all, because likely, yeah, a governor wouldn't um, feel like he could ever make a decision like
Just,
that based on saving money
mm-hmm.
for a white community. Yeah, that's unheard
Yeah,
of.
right. And if they did, they wouldn't have just like temporarily switched to an untested water supply.
Mhm.
They would finish the infrastructure before they changed. But because they were like, well, it's Flint and we gotta pay for all that shit anyway, just like do it. You know? It's so
Yeah, they like
disgusting.
treated it as a ghost town. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
as if
It's 100,000 people. Yeah.
man. Yeah, I remember I still follow Little Miss Flint,
Yep.
the like young girl who went and met with Obama 2016 or something like that. She's always been a really a strong voice in that movement. But I don't know of other people or other organizations that are like still actively working on this. But
Yeah,
it seems like it just kind of like fell from
just
popularity. Like,
in
yeah.
2019 it was sort of like problem solved, and the rest of it's bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, what are they actually going to do now? Like, what problem can they be solving? It just comes back to what we've talked about before, which is like pay people and give, like,
Mm-hmm.
treat the city like it's a place where people live and work and like feel things. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. It's not. Yeah. Yeah.
Man, yeah.
Sucks.
Sad
Mm-hmm.
history. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, this isn't new. Flint has just taken the brunt of like racist measures and segregation and you know like classist
Mm-hmm.
problems for decades, and this is a culmination of all of those things together.
Right.
It's
Because at one
forgotten.
time, these populations right around Detroit and Flint, because there was those car manufacturers, like they were relatively like middle class areas for a
Super,
while. Yeah.
super. Flint was a bustling, rich community. It was almost the capital of the state. Like
Yeah.
it was a well-to-do community until white folks started moving out. Property values went down. The cycle.
Mm-hmm.
GM pulled out, and then
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Left the community there.
mm-hmm. Yeah, sort of like when I think about old railroad towns or old like random western towns that had hopes for a railroad to come through their city but like never did, and
Mhm.
so there's like four people living there in the middle of nowhere now,
Yeah.
except for that it's a big fucking city.
Right. 100,000 is nothing to, yeah, it's not, it's, yeah, that's a
Yeah,
sizable. And
yeah, and it's also like it's way smaller than it used to be. Flint used to have lots more people in it. I don't know the
okay.
top population
Hmm.
number, but yeah, this is after years of being left behind. So, but people in Flint love Flint. I grew up like super loving Flint. That's the other side of it, is that like they are it's just a strong community. If you go walk down the streets of Flint, hey, what's up? How you doing? Like it's friendly. I mean, it's Midwestern. It's friendly. Like half the people will have like a Flint shirt on. Like people are proud to be from Flint,
Yeah.
Michigan.
Yeah.
So, and it's cool. Like, they're proud that they're there.
Yeah. I mean, those kinds of things. I mean, that's what like brings people together is fighting, having a united thing to fight against or
Yeah.
for. And this community has been historically underserved. So, of course, they're going to only stick out for each other and love each other because they're not getting love from anywhere
Right.
else.
Right. And that's its own cool thing.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen more recent news that was like, yeah, I mean, independently funded, like there was some like trying to kind of start like a main street kind of opening
Yeah.
new shops and things, and it was all like locals only basically that
Yeah,
like
they have a farmer's market, and the way they do a
mhm,
farmer's market is like indoor because it's Michigan, so it gets cold half the year, and then people sell their little wares, and it's cool. And that wasn't there when I was a kid. So, I
mhm.
mean, And if you go there, people are like, Flint's coming back, which is rad. It's like rad to see that people have such love for this place, even though the government is like super uncaring.
Yeah, I mean, the strength of those people and it's pretty remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah.
Damn.
It's such a bummer, but
oh.
Maven agrees.
She agrees.
Maven likes Flint. She's a Flint dog. Actually, she really is a Flint dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a rescue. Apparently we have. So yeah.
That's a bit about Flint, huh?
That's a bit about Flint. Yeah. Thanks for listening and following along and learning about it with us.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, wild. Stay tuned for the next one. Dakota Access Pipeline, line 3. These are definitely also kind of, I guess, more contemporary kind of issues that are still actively unfolding. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. All right. Bye.